Holy shit. Ladies and gentlemen, they actually did it. One of the biggest moments of the year when it comes to movies has just happened with the release of the first trailer for 28 years later. A trailer that people have been waiting to see and have known about for weeks now that it was coming this month, eagerly anticipating what this movie could bring as a sequel 17 years in the making. What people did not expect was just how incredible this trailer was in what it showed us through the footage, but also how it was made. We are going to talk about that here in today's video. As someone who wasn't old enough at the time when the original two movies came out, it's always fun to hear those stories from people who were there to experience them. Comment down below where you were when those films came out and how you've been eagerly awaiting this film for years. Let's not waste any time and get right into it, because as someone who's been waiting to see if they ever were to make a third film to the trilogy, it brings me nothing but joy to see that the trailer at least is showing that they came back in the best possible way. In the last 5 or so years, I got a chance to see the original two films for the first time and was pleasantly surprised by both, more so the first than the second. In some regards, it has become somewhat of a cult classic for people in the sense that it did something unique with the zombie subgenre of horror. I know that this franchise doesn't technically call them zombies, but in a way, it is still technically classified as a zombie film. But I think where this franchise has gotten its impact from is not so much because of the genre it's a part of, but mainly to do with the filmmakers and how they actually made that first film. The horror genre is by far one of the most important genres in film when it comes to the filmmaking process and how it's utilized to make great horror films. 28 Days Later was almost evolutionary with what it was able to do, filming with an at the time innovative digital camera, making it one of the first Hollywood feature films to be shot on that kind of camera. It was able to give the movie a different feel and look to it that you hadn't seen in other films before. Aside from that, the way they utilized the practicality of on-location shooting of the UK made it feel more lived in. Usage of other practical effects and camera angles to make it stand out is what ultimately I think makes this movie as iconic as it is for a lot of horror fans. 28 Weeks Later had done this a little bit, but not as much as the original film, which is why the second film is not as memorable as the first to this day. It was still a decent film, but you didn't have that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland touch to it like the first one did, given they didn't return to make that sequel. Here we are now, and we are finally getting that 28 years later third film with both filmmakers returning, and it looks like the return to form that so many people have been waiting to see. I don't ever mince my words, and I give my honest opinions. And my honest opinion is that this trailer is one of the best we've had all year and is made to perfection. I was getting chills watching this thing, and my first instinct was to immediately go and re-watch it a couple more times afterwards. If a trailer can make you do that, then you know it did its job well. I was enamored and locked into all the footage that they showed in this trailer, especially with how they edited it. This trailer also breaks the mold and stain that the horror genre has given to us in recent years with how trailers are made for films in this genre. It doesn't give anything away, there's not much of the story being shown, and it heavily relies on sound design, imagery, and editing to make you feel a certain way. That is how you do a great first teaser, and I wish all horror movies did that. It seems recently we are starting to see that go back in the right direction, and I hope that this trailer will just be the next in line to show people that this is how you make effective marketing. The usage of the poem called Boots by Rudyard Kipling is a very interesting touch that I can imagine both Alex Garland and Danny Boyle wanted to include within the trailer. If anyone knows Alex Garland, you'll know that with many of his films, he tends to add in some idea of social commentary or certain themes that elicit more real-life stuff. When doing some research, I found that this poem was made during a time in reference to the repetition of the British Army who was forced to march into South Africa during the Second Boer War of 1899 to 1902. Kipling, the author of the poem, was around during that time, and that's where it comes from and how it was created. Apparently, nowadays, it's used in military training to help break people down mentally and make them go insane, or maybe not insane if they're able to hold back on it. In a ways, I guess that's where Alex Garland comes into play, in the sense that he's adding in that theme of what it means to live in this world, surrounded by all these infected, and how someone could probably deal with that for almost 28 years. It's an interesting addition that I think made it even more effective, and I applaud the editors for adding that in, and also if Alex Garland had anything to do with its inclusion. But let's actually talk about that footage, because I know that that's where you all are interested in the most. Now, I don't think it's exactly made all that clear what the story is going to be, other than it's a continuation of where the world, or at least this side of the world, is like with regards to this infection breakout that happened 28 years ago in their timeline. That's maybe the most fascinating thing about this franchise for me, is that it never feels like it needs to overly explain where the world is, or if it even is an outbreak that affected the entire world. The end of the first film almost kind of gave a hint to that in a way, but if I'm being totally honest, I'm not completely into the world and lore of what this franchise is about. If I'm saying anything that's off in any way, I sincerely apologize, but it's just the way that I look into the films with what I know about them. This film, from the looks of it, is not seeing any of the characters from the past two come back, even if we do know that apparently Cillian Murphy is going to show up. There are behind-the-scenes photos of him on set of the movie, so it does seem like he's going to come back in some regard. I haven't seen any indication to suggest that Naomi Harris or the little girl from the first movie will return either, so it might just be Cillian Murphy. Although, the internet reaction to this image in the trailer has certainly sparked a conversation about if his character is even alive in the current timeline. I know it's our first instinct to suggest that that is him because it looks like him, but I would be very shocked if they let this kind of thing slip in the trailer as a spoiler. It might not be him, and just someone who looks like him, but the theories are going to be all out about where his character could be involved in with regards to this movie. We seem to be following a whole group of new characters played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Jodie Comer, and Ralph Fiennes, and also some other actors that I'm not familiar with. What their story is, I'm very curious about, because it seems like all three of them are playing three different kinds of characters. When more story details come out, I'm sure that we will find out more about that. I must say, the one thing I might be excited for the most is the fact that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland have not lost their way with regards to how they actually filmed the movie. As I mentioned already, the first film was very influential with how it was made, and it seems like they are taking that same approach here yet again with this one. Everything with regards to the on-location shooting that definitely looks like it was shot in the UK, the practical use of effects with the infected and not much CGI being used, if any at all, the camera angles, changing of the shutter speed to make movement and light be captured differently than you see in other films, and the fact that it looks like it is invoking the found footage nature of what they intended to do with that first movie all those years ago, mixed with the fast-paced editing. It just straight up looks like they made the first film all over again, and I love that. If you think that's cool, wait till you hear the fact that apparently this entire movie was shot on an iPhone, specifically an iPhone 15 Pro Max. They were not able to get an iPhone 16 before shooting, but at the time, the iPhone 15 Pro Max was the most up-to-date phone from Apple. If you want to go read online, apparently there is a certain way with how it looks like they filmed the movie using this method, and I'll link that article in the description below if you want to go read into it. It's very interesting. It certainly doesn't look like it's filmed on an iPhone, but I can imagine that there are some techniques that they used to make it look like it was just filmed on a regular camera. That right there just tells you all you need to know about how much care they are putting into this film. Like, the first, they want to innovate with how they are making the movie and how they want it to come off within whatever the story is going to be, and I love that. The final thing I want to talk about with regards to the trailer actually has to do with some good news that, depending on how you look at it, might make you more confident in wanting to see the movie come next year. When I was scrolling Instagram to find the trailer on Sony Pictures' official Instagram, I also found that 28 Years Later also has their own page. If you go into the comments, you'll find that there is one person who apparently worked on the film who gave some reassurance as to what we could expect. The user Adam Pescott commented, "I had the pleasure of working on this and the next film. I know the scripts as well, but even I am surprised and excited by this trailer. Cannot wait." After reading this, I went into his profile and you can see that he is one of the storyboard people who worked on it. He replied to some other people in the comments of that thread telling them that this was the first and announced as the first of a new trilogy of films coming, which is something that we actually already knew about, but he also gives us that reassurance that all is going well. Someone else also chimed into that thread thread saying that they also worked on it as well and is super excited. I think that this gives me some good confidence on what we could expect to see when it gets released in June next year. They also gave us 2 posters with this as well. The first looking not as original, but still cool in its design, utilizing that virus symbol that we all know well. The second poster is a little bit more graphic and violent, and I must say, feels a little out of place, just because this franchise is not really known for that kind of thing. The movies are violent, don't get me wrong, but you don't ever see that kind of violence to the point where you would think that this was a poster for a Mortal Kombat film. I do love the tagline though, where it says, "In 28 days, it began. In 28 weeks, it spread. In 28 years, it evolved." So maybe that's a clue as to what we could expect to see from the infected in the movie. And again, I'm just really excited to see the potential of what we could see come next year in June. So there you have it. That's my commentary on the first trailer for 28 Years Later. I kind of wish they didn't release this at 3 in the morning my time. That was probably the only mistake they made with the trailer, but I digress. What do you all think? Leave your comments down below and let's have a nice and respectful conversation about it. Thank you for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a community on here and your support would be appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and I will see you all soon for the next video.